October 3rd, 2025. NASA's Perseverance rover on Mars captured images of 3 Atlas. Not the clearest shot, but something. An astrophotographer named Simeon Schmaus stacked 20 of those rover images, and there it was. A faint smudge of light, exactly where the interstellar visitor should be. People are talking about it, analyzing it, debating what it shows. But here is what is strange. That same day, NASA furloughed 15,000 employees. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter's high-rise camera, capable of 30 times better resolution than what Perseverance captured, was positioned perfectly for the shot of a lifetime. ESA's Mars Express and ExoMars were watching too. Where are those images? And it gets stranger. Remote viewers detected technology aboard this object back in August. A thumb drive-sized device deliberately placed inside an ancient comet broadcasting impulses. They described this months before the telescope started detecting the chemical impossibilities. Timestamps in the description if you want to jump ahead. Before we dive deeper, if you find this fascinating, hit that like button and subscribe to stay updated. Tell me in the comments where you are listening from, what time it is there, and what you think this object really is. Natural comet or something more. Want to help our community grow? Share this on X, Facebook, Reddit, or your messenger. Thank you for always having our back. Chapter 1. The Cylinder in the Martian Sky. Let me show you something that appeared on Twitter 48 hours ago that changed everything. A user called UFO Mania posted an image with a caption that sent shockwaves through the online astronomy community. The newest and closest of 3 Atlas, as it passes, is not a comet, is perfectly cylindrical. The post included what appeared to be an elongated object captured during the Mars flyby, and within hours it had been shared thousands of times. Now, before you dismiss this as just another internet conspiracy, understand what makes this different. This was not some blurry photograph from someone's backyard telescope. The coordinates matched, the timing matched, and most importantly, the silence from official channels matched. Because here is what nobody is talking about. On October 3rd, when 3-2 Atlas made its closest approach to Mars at 29 million kilometers, we should have been flooded with images. The high-resolution imaging experiment camera aboard NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter was positioned perfectly. The European SpaceEye's Mars Express and ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter had their instruments trained on the exact location. Multiple spacecraft, multiple angles, the best resolution ever achieved of an interstellar object, and we got nothing. Well, not nothing, we got silence. But into that silence stepped voices that could not be ignored. An account called 3I Atlas Anomaly began posting a technical breakdown that was far more detailed than typical conspiracy content. 10 specific points, each citing actual observations. Carbon dioxide-rich coma revealed by JWST. Water and hydroxyl emission detected by SWIFT. Polarimetric oddities showing -2.77 polarization at phase angle 7, a combination unprecedented among asteroids and comets. Think about that for a moment. This was not vague speculation. These were citing real instruments, real measurements, real scientific papers. Then came the cosmologist, a Twitter user named Moneypenny who identifies as a plasma phenomena expert and former BBC journalist, posted something that made even skeptics pause. She claimed a leading cosmologist named Stephen Burns believes the object is intelligent, surrounded by dusty plasma, and exhibiting consciousness, which has already been communicating with us and with other planets. Consciousness communicating. Now you might think this sounds like fringe territory, and perhaps it is, but here is where it gets interesting. This was not posted in some dark corner of the internet. This was in plain sight, with Moneypenny's credentials attached, her background in investigative journalism on display. And she added one more detail that sent a chill through anyone paying attention. We can no longer look at it as it is too close to the Sunday, so it will now be December before we are able to view it again. December, 3 months of waiting. 3 months while the object is hidden behind the sun, completely obscured from every telescope on Earth. And during those 3 months, if the trajectory changes, we would not know until it reemerges. Then there was Jon Stewart, not the comedian, but a UFO investigator and journalist, who posted something that read like a warning from another era. My source has gone dark. NASA is shutting down, and even Congress is in a recess. If Threeless activates, ancient texts warn, the sky will burn with knowing light, and the world will forget its reflection. They called it prophecy. The agencies call it protocol. I call it imminent. Ancient texts, Vatican files, the harbinger. These hashtags were trending alongside technical astronomical discussions. In the last 48 hours, as these posts went viral, not a single official image from the Mars flyby has been released. Not from NASA, not from ESA, not from the Chinese Tianwen-1 mission or the UAE's Hope orbiter, all of which we're watching. The only visual evidence we have comes from an astrophotographer named Simeon Schmaus, who stacked 20 images from the Perseverance rover's Mastcam's camera and found what he described as a faint smudge of light in the constellation Corona Borealis, close to the location where the comet was expected. A faint smudge. That is what we got from humanity's closest look at an interstellar visitor from spacecraft that can resolve features smaller than a car on the Martian surface. We got a faint smudge. Unless, of course, they saw something else entirely and chose not to show us. The 3 Atlas Anomaly account continued posting updates that grew increasingly specific. Unexpected brightening. The object is brightening faster than models predicted, suggesting more volatile or efficient outgassing mechanisms than expected for its distance. Spacecraft to observe during solar conjunction. As the object slips behind the sun, ground observations cut off. ESA is repurposing Mars orbiters to monitor it near the October 3rd Mars flyby at approximately 30 million kilometers. Every update was technically accurate. Every detail could be verified against published scientific observations. And yet, the conclusion they were building toward was unmistakable. This was not behaving like a comet. And then came the detail that nobody could explain away: the shape. Multiple amateur astronomers working independently reported the same thing. When they processed their images, enhanced the contrast, removed the background stars, what remained was not the fuzzy, irregular blob you would expect from a comet with an active coma. It was elongated, smooth, almost geometric, perfectly cylindrical, as UFO Mania had said. Now, skeptics would point out that elongation can be an artifact of motion, of image processing, of the way light scatters through a coma. And they would be right. It can be. But it can also be real. We know this because Oumuamua, the first interstellar visitor, was also elongated. Pancake-shaped, some said cigar-shaped, others argued. But definitely not round. Definitely not what we expected. So when 3I Atlas shows similar characteristics, when multiple independent observers report the same geometric quality, when the official channels remain silent, what are we supposed to think? The answer, according to NASA's carefully worded statements, is that 3 Atlas poses no threat to Earth. Its trajectory keeps it safely hundreds of millions of kilometers away from our planet. It will make its closest approach to the Sun on October 30th, then continue on its journey out of the solar system, never to return. All of which is true. All of which sidesteps the question everyone is actually asking. What is it? And why, on the day we should have gotten our best look at it, did 15,000 NASA employees get sent home? Chapter 2. The Remote Viewer's Revelation. What I'm about to tell you happened in August of 2025. 2 months before the Mars flyby, before the shutdown, before any of the viral posts that captured public attention. And it happened under conditions that make it impossible to dismiss as wishful thinking or confirmation bias. Her name is Bertie Jorski, and if you know anything about remote viewing, you know that name. Former vice president of the Farsight Institute, nearly 30 years of professional remote viewing experience, a master's degree in digital forensics. Not exactly the profile of someone chasing internet fame with wild claims. In August, a friend gave her a set of coordinates, Just numbers, no context, no photographs, no news articles. This is how legitimate remote viewing works. The target remains completely blind. The viewer has no idea what they are looking at until after the session is complete. Birdie sat down, entered her protocol, and began to describe what she was perceiving. The first thing she reported was movement through space, something traveling, something old, very old. She described it as a natural object, icy, rocky, exactly what you would expect if someone asked you to remote view a comet. And for a while, that is all it was. But then she noticed something unusual. There was something that was not completely natural, she said later in podcast, discussing her findings. There was something strange. The way she described it, it felt like discovering a fingerprint on something that should be pristine, a signature where there should be only randomness. She kept going deeper into the session, and that is when she perceived it. Something small about the size of a thumb drive, something that had been deliberately placed inside this object, not on the surface, inside. Someone had bored into this rock, she reported. Bored into this icy rock deliberately and placed something encoded with all kinds of information. It is kind of like an archive, a message in a bottle. But it is not just a message, it is technology of some sort. Now, pause and think about what she's describing. Not alien beings, not a massive spacecraft. A thumb drive-sized piece of technology, ancient beyond measure, hidden inside a comet that has been traveling through the galaxy for billions of years. She went further. This thing is so old. And even though the object itself is like billions of years old, the thing that was placed inside of it is also very old. Did some species there on the other side of the galaxy send up a little robot to bore into it and stick their little message in technology, knowing that this thing was going to keep traveling? It is a question that sounds like science fiction until you remember that we have done exactly this. The Voyager probes carry golden records, time capsules designed to survive for billions of years in the hope that someone someday might find them. The idea of using natural objects as vessels for messages is not alien to us at all. We just have not thought about it in reverse. The friend who gave Birdie the coordinates waited until after the session to reveal what she had been viewing. 3 Atlas, the interstellar object that would not even make headlines until weeks later. She had been viewing something that most of the world did not yet know existed, but Birdie was not finished. She did 2 more sessions going deeper, trying to understand what she was perceiving. And in those follow-up sessions, she discovered something that changed the entire picture. It is also broadcasting. She reported these messages come out in pulses, broadcasting present tense, not was broadcasting billions of years ago, is broadcasting now. When the podcast host mentioned that astronomer Avi Lowe had recently published calculations showing 3I Atlas arrived from the same region of the sky as the famous WOW signal from 1977, Birdie did not hesitate. That is super interesting. She said it is very possible that that is the WOW signal. Now, you might be wondering how much weight to give to remote viewing testimony. It is not a conventional scientific method. It cannot be easily replicated or verified. Skeptics dismiss it entirely. Believers swear by it. And the truth, as always, probably lies somewhere in the complicated middle. But here is what makes Bird's account worth considering. She was not alone. Multiple remote viewing groups working independently targeted 3I Atlas in the months following its discovery. And while the specifics varied, certain themes emerged again and again. Technology, deliberate placement, broadcasting, the involvement of non-human intelligence. One group reported perceiving humanoid forms associated with the object. Another described what they called graffiti, markings, signatures. Someone had signed it. Several viewers reported the sensation of the object being masked, deliberately avoiding detection as if it did not want to be fully seen. One particularly detailed report mentioned special access, extraction points, a time-et. These were not vague mystical impressions. They were specific technical details that sounded more like intelligence briefing than psychic session. And then there were the more disturbing elements. References to crop circles, advanced spherical craft, hybrid warfare, invisible war. The phrase brain scanning technologies appeared in multiple independent sessions. The suggestion that whatever this was, it had the capability to influence minds to incite mass hysteria or hallucination. Now, does any of this prove 3 Atlas is anything other than a comet? Of course not. Remote viewing, even at its most rigorous, remains in the realm of anomalous cognition, not hard science. These are not measurements. They're not photographs. They're subjective impressions filtered through human consciousness, but they are also remarkably consistent across multiple independent viewers who had no contact with each other. And they align in eerie ways with the physical anomalies that telescopes were beginning to detect. Consider what Birdie described. A small technological device billions of years old, placed deliberately inside a comet. If that were true, what would we expect to see? We would expect the object to look like a comet from a distance. Ice, dust, outgassing, all the normal signatures. But up close, we might notice things that do not quite fit. Unusual chemical compositions, unexpected materials, behaviors that seem almost designed rather than random. We would expect it to be massive, far more massive than its visible size suggests, because there would be something dense at its core, something that does not sublimate, something that remains intact no matter how much ice boils away. And we would expect it perhaps to be transmitting, not loudly, not obviously, but if you knew where to look, if you had the right instruments pointed in the right direction at the right time, you might detect something. A pulse, a pattern, a signal that should not be there. Birdie Dworsky perceived all of this in August, before most of the scientific data was published, before the anomalies became undeniable, before NASA went silent. She described a message in a bottle traveling through the galaxy. And now, as 3I Atlas hides behind the sun, as official channels refuse to release images from the Mars flyby, as amateur astronomers report cylindrical shapes and scientists detect impossible chemistry, that bottle is getting closer to perihelion, the point of maximum heat, maximum stress. The point where, as Avi put it, confessions are elicited. If there is a thumb drive-sized piece of technology buried in the heart of this comet, October 29th is when it will either reveal itself or remain hidden forever. And the fact that NASA sent 15,000 employees home right before we could get our best look raises a question that remote viewers have been asking since August. What did they see that we are not being shown? Chapter 3. NASA's Deafening Silence. October 3rd, 2025 was supposed to be historic. The day humanity got its closest look at an interstellar visitor. Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter positioned perfectly. High-rise camera ready to capture resolution 30 times better than anything Hubble could achieve. ESA's Mars Express and ExoMars trace gas orbiter standing by with full instrument arrays. Then, at the exact moment when we needed NASA, most 83 of the agency disappeared. 15,000 civil servants furled, gone during what should have been the most intensive observation campaign in the history of interstellar astronomy. The official explanation was simple: federal government shutdown, budget impasse, nothing to do with 3I Atlas. Just unfortunate timing. Unfortunate timing. Those two words doing a lot of work to explain why the world's premier space agency went dark precisely when an object exhibiting 7 statistical impossibilities passed within 29 million kilometers of our Mars spacecraft. Think about the odds of that for a moment. 3 Atlas was discovered in July. The Mars flyby was planned for months. Scientists knew this would be their only chance to capture high-resolution images before the object disappeared behind the Sunday. NASA knew. ESA knew. Every space agency on Earth knew. And in the final week before closest approach, the United States government shut down. NASA's official website stopped updating. Press releases ceased. The army of scientists who should have been analyzing data, processing images, making discoveries, They were sent home. Only essential personnel remained, a skeleton crew maintaining critical operations. But here is what makes it suspicious. Raw image feeds from Perseverance rover kept uploading. The rover did not stop working. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter did not stop working. The cameras were active. The data was being collected. It just was not being released to the public. Amateur astronomer Dobsonian Power, a YouTuber with a solar telescope, posted an image on October 3rd with a simple caption, "What on earth is it?" The image showed something dark angular embedded within the expected position of 3I Atlas. Within hours, the post had thousands of views, people demanding answers, people pointing out that if a backyard observer could capture this, what were the professional instruments seeing? NASA said nothing. EA said nothing. The only official confirmation that observations had occurred came from Simeon Schmaus, the astrophotographer who stacked 20 Perseverance images and found that faint smudge. He posted his work on social media, not through official channels, a private citizen doing the work that space agencies would not. Then came the White House press briefing. Stephen Miller, Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy, was discussing the government shutdown when a reporter asked a question that had been circulating online for days. "Has the president been briefed about 3I Atlas?" The room went quiet. Miller paused, chose his words carefully, and deflected. The briefing moved on, but the question had been asked on camera in an official setting, which meant it could no longer be dismissed as internet conspiracy. The United States government was being asked directly about an interstellar object, and they were choosing not to answer. Meanwhile, Havel was making the rounds on news networks, Newsmax, CBS, podcasts, anyone who would listen. He laid out the anomalies with mathematical precision. The trajectory aligned with the ecliptic plane, 0.2 probability. The 7 characteristics that made 3I Atlas unlike anything ever observed, and he kept returning to one point. We need the Mars orbiter data. The high-ray images could tell us the diameter of the nucleus. They could resolve structure. They could answer the fundamental question of what we are looking at. But the images were not being released. On a podcast with Brian Kading, Lowe mentioned that Representative Tim Burchett, member of the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability, had appeared with him on Newsmax to discuss the object. A sitting congressman on national television talking about an interstellar visitor and the suspicious silence surrounding it. This was no longer fringe discussion. This was entering mainstream political discourse. And still, NASA said nothing. The European Space Agency released a statement confirming that Mars Express and ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter had successfully observed 3I Atlas during the flyby window of October 1st through 7th. Instruments, including the high-resolution stereo camera, the color and stereo surface imaging system, and multiple spectrometers had collected data. Data that would be analyzed in the coming weeks. They said results to be published when ready, but no images, no preliminary findings, no excitement about capturing unprecedented views of an interstellar object at closest range. Just a dry confirmation that observations occurred, followed by silence. China's Tianwen-1 mission said nothing. The UAE's Hope orbiter said nothing. Every spacecraft at Mars had been watching, and every space agency on Earth had gone quiet. You do not need to be a conspiracy theorist to find this strange. You just need to remember what happened with 2 Boris, the previous interstellar comet. When it passed through in 2019, images flooded out immediately. Scientists were excited. Press releases flew. The astronomical community celebrated. It was treated exactly as you would expect. A rare visitor from beyond our solar system, worthy of intense study and public engagement. 3 Atlas gets silence. The difference perhaps is that 2 Boris behaved exactly like a comet. It had the right chemistry, the right tail, the right outgassing patterns. It was interesting because it came from interstellar space, but it was not anomalous. It did not challenge our understanding. It did not raise uncomfortable questions. 3 Atlas does all of those things. And so, as it disappeared behind the sun on its way to perihelion, As it entered the one place in the solar system where no telescope on Earth can see it, the silence deepened. Amateur astronomers posted their last images,